The night Elara Thorne stumbled into the royal bedchamber wearing nothing but a stolen cloak and wine courage, she had three very clear thoughts. 1. The morning candles in the dead queen's shrine were far too pretty to waste on grief that belonged to people who had never met the woman. 2. Palace wine tasted significantly better than the vinegar the kitchen master called celebration, and she had perhaps enjoyed 4 glasses too many of the good stuff. 3. If she was going to be caught stealing memorial flowers for her sick grandmother, who actually had nothing wrong with her except a talent for guilt and manipulation, she might as well do it spectacularly. What she had not expected, in any version of this magnificently poor decision, was the bed. Or more specifically, the enormous Alpha King currently occupying it. King KL Draven sat propped against black pillows, shirtless, a mourning band tied around one scarred bicep that looked like it had seen more battles than the entire palace guard combined. His eyes were closed. His jaw was tight enough to crack stone. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to sleep sometime around the last war and was grimly determined to punish the bed for reminding him. Elara froze in the doorway, arms full of stolen moonflowers that suddenly felt very incriminating, wearing a cloak that definitely did not belong to her and probably belonged to someone important, wine still buzzing pleasantly through her veins in a way that was about to become significantly less pleasant. She should leave, obviously, immediately. Preferably before he opened those eyes and decided she was an assassin instead of a very drunk, very lost seamstress who had taken 3 wrong turns, 1 regrettable dare, and possibly a brief detour through the wine cellar that she would deny under torture. Instead, she hiccuped. The sound echoed across the vast chamber like a bell announcing doom. His eyes opened. They were gray, storm gray, the specific shade of gray that made you remember every poor decision you had ever made and several you had not gotten around to yet, but were definitely considering. For one perfect, terrible moment, neither of them moved. Then Kale sat up slowly, every muscle in his torso doing things that were extremely distracting and very inappropriate for Elara to notice, given that she was currently committing at least 3 separate crimes. "Who?" he said, voice like gravel scraped over iron and then left out in winter. "Are you?" Elara's wine-soaked brain offered several options. The truth was one of them. A clever lie was another. Screaming and running was a distant third. She chose none of these. "Your grief counselor," she announced with the confidence of someone who had definitely had too much wine. The king stared at her. She stared back, trying very hard to look professional and therapeutic despite the stolen flowers, borrowed cloak, and the fact that she was swaying slightly on her feet. Then, because wine made her brave and bravery made her stupid, she walked into his room, set the stolen moonflowers on his nightstand with the careful precision of the drunk, and sat down on the edge of his bed like she had every right to be there. "What?" Kale said slowly. "Are you doing?" "Grief counseling. In my bedroom. This is where the grief lives." "Is it?" "Obviously. Look at this bed. It's very sad." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Elara took this as permission to continue her assessment. She looked around the room with the critical eye of someone who had spent 23 years mending other people's torn things and could recognize damage when she saw it. The room was immaculate, too immaculate. The kind of clean that happened when a person was afraid of what they might feel if they let anything be out of place. The bed was perfectly made on one side. The other side looked like it had never been touched. "You don't sleep here," she said. It was not a question. Kale's expression went carefully blank. "That is none of your concern." "It is if I'm grief counseling." "You are not grief counseling." "Then why haven't you called the guards?" That apparently was an excellent question. One KL did not seem to have an answer for. He stood instead, and Elara discovered that seeing him sitting had not prepared her for seeing him standing. He was enormous, easily over 6 feet of pure alpha muscle, scars, and controlled violence. The mourning band around his arm only emphasized the width of his shoulders. She should be terrified. She was not terrified. She was, if she were being honest with herself, which the wine insisted she should be, fascinated. "Answer my question," he said, taking 1 step closer. "Who are you?" "I told you. I'm your grief counselor." "The palace did not hire a grief counselor. That's exactly why you need one." "What I need," Kale said, voice dropping into something dangerous and dark, is for drunk girls to stop breaking into my bedroom at midnight. Has this happened before? No. Then I'm unique. That's very therapeutic. His eyes flashed gold for just a moment, just long enough for Elara to realize that she might have made a tactical error. Wolves did not flash gold unless something had triggered their animal, and whatever she had just triggered did not look particularly interested in therapy. You're drunk, he said. It was not a question this time either. I'm therapeutically enhanced, Elara corrected. You're very drunk. I'm very therapeutic. You broke into the dead queen's shrine. That made her pause. How do you know that? Those flowers, he gestured to the moonflowers she had so carefully placed on his nightstand, only grow in Seraphine's memorial shrine. And they are guarded. Not very well, apparently. You stole sacred flowers from a royal memorial. I borrowed them. For what possible reason? For you. The words came out softer than she intended, more honest than she had planned. The wine had apparently decided that this was a moment for truth instead of self-preservation. Kale went very still. For me. Yes. Why? Because you looked sad. And there it was, the truth she had been trying to avoid since she had taken Marin's dare. Since she had seen the king at the memorial procession 3 weeks ago, standing alone on the balcony while the entire court mourned below, since she had watched him stare at nothing with empty eyes and thought, that is the loneliest thing I have ever seen. I looked sad, Kale repeated, voice flat. Very sad. And you thought flowers would help. Everyone needs flowers. I don't need flowers. Then why haven't you thrown me out yet? It was not a nice question. It was the kind of question Wine asked when common sense had gone to bed 3 drinks ago. But once it was out, Elara could not take it back. And Kale, apparently, did not have an answer for it either. He just stood there, this enormous alpha king in his sad, perfect bedroom, looking at her with something that might have been confusion or might have been something more dangerous that Elara's wine-soaked brain could not quite identify. What is your name? He asked finally. She should lie, give him a false name, protect herself from whatever punishment came next for drunk seamstresses who stole sacred flowers and broke into royal bedrooms. Instead, she said, Elara Thorne. His eyes flashed gold again, brighter this time, longer. Elara, he repeated, like he was tasting the word. The way he said it did something strange to her chest, like her name had been waiting her entire life for someone to pronounce it correctly, and now that someone had, everything else sounded wrong. Yes, she managed. You work in the palace. Yes. Doing what? Mending things. Things. Sleeves. Curtains. Occasionally cloaks that drunk girls steal. Oh. One. Come. Curtains. That got a reaction. Not quite a smile, but something in his eyes shifted. Something almost alive. You stole a cloak. Borrowed. Is there anything you did not borrow tonight? My poor judgment. That's all mine. This time, the almost smile came closer to being real. Then his gaze dropped to the flowers again, and whatever softness had been building cracked. Those flowers, he said quietly, were placed in Seraphine's shrine 20 years ago, on the day she died. They are maintained by the Temple Sisters as part of her eternal memorial. Oh, Elara said, feeling slightly sick. And you stole them. I really thought they would help. Help with what? The sadness. Kale turned away from her, walked to the window. His shoulders were rigid, his hands curled into fists at his sides. You saw me at the procession, he said. Yes. And you thought I looked sad. Yes. So you decided to break multiple sacred laws, steal memorial flowers, and deliver them to my bedroom in the middle of the night. When he said it like that, it sounded much less therapeutic. I was drunk, Elara offered weakly. You are still drunk. I am very drunk. And you are in my bedroom. Yes. Wearing a stolen cloak. Borrowed. Carrying stolen flowers. Also borrowed. Having broken into a sacred shrine. I'm starting to think I made some poor choices. Kale made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something more painful. When he turned back to face her, the gold had faded from his eyes, but something else had replaced it. Something that looked uncomfortably close to anguish. You have no idea what you have done, he said. I brought you flowers. You brought me flowers that were placed on my dead mate's shrine. The room went cold. Oh, Elara whispered. Oh, no. Yes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I just thought they were pretty and you looked sad and— Stop. She stopped. Kale closed his eyes, took one long, controlled breath. When he opened them again, the anguish was locked away behind that careful, kingly control. You should go, he said. I'm sorry. Go. Your Majesty, I truly did not mean— I know. His voice gentled slightly. But you should still go. Elara stood on shaking legs. The wine had worn off enough for shame to flood in. She had broken into the king's bedroom, stolen his dead mate's memorial flowers, sat on his bed like an idiot and made jokes about grief counseling. She deserved whatever punishment came next. But when she reached the door, his voice stopped her. Elara. She turned. Kale was looking at the flowers now, not at her. No one has brought me flowers in 20 years. I'm sorry, she said again. Don't be. He looked up. You were right. I am sad. And before Elara could find words for the ache in his voice, she fled. Chapter 1. Elara woke to sunlight, shame, and the crushing certainty that she had made a series of catastrophically poor decisions that would probably end in her execution. She was still in her borrowed cloak, still smelling like stolen wine and memorial flowers, still remembering every single horrible thing she had said to the king. Grief counselor. She had called herself a grief counselor to the Alpha King about his dead mate. Elara groaned and buried her face in her pillow. You're alive, Marin said from the doorway. Elara did not move. Unfortunately. What happened? I would prefer not to discuss it. You were gone for 3 hours. Still not discussing it. Marin crossed the room and sat on the edge of Elara's cot. Did you actually steal the flowers? Yes. And deliver them to the king's bedroom? Yes. And survive? Apparently. Marin was quiet for a long moment. Then, what was he like? That was a complicated question. What was the king like? Sad, lonely, beautiful in the way storms were beautiful, controlled in a way that suggested if he ever lost control, people would die. And underneath all of it, something else. Something that had made him look at her like she was a puzzle he could not solve. He was kind, Elara said finally. Surprisingly kind. Elara, he's the Alpha King. He's killed more people than you have mended sleeves. I know. He's terrifying. I know that too. Then why do you sound like you want to steal more flowers? Elara sat up and glared at her friend. I do not want to steal more flowers. You definitely do. I absolutely do not. You have that look. What look? The look you get when you are about to do something stupid for someone else's sake? That was unfortunately accurate. Elara had spent 23 years doing stupid things for other people's sake, covering for girls who overslept, taking extra shifts for boys who had been out drinking, mending things that she had not broken simply because no one else would. It was a problem. She knew it was a problem. I'm not doing anything, she said. Good, Marin said, because Mistress Corwin is looking for you. Elara's stomach dropped. Why? She didn't say, but she looked serious. Serious was bad. Serious meant someone had reported her. Serious meant consequences. Elara found the head housekeeper in the main servants' hall, looking exactly as terrifying as advertised. Mistress Corwin was a thin woman with steel-gray hair and the kind of face that had probably been born frowning. She did not believe in wasting words, or kindness, or anything that could not be measured in efficiency. You, she said when Elara approached. Yes, mistress. You were in the West Wing last night. I do not lie. Multiple guards reported seeing a girl in a black cloak wandering the royal corridors at midnight. Elara's mind raced. She could lie, say it was not her, claim mistaken identity. But Mistress Corwin's eyes said she already knew the truth. Yes, mistress, Elara said quietly. What were you doing there? I got lost. Lost. Yes, mistress. In the West Wing, at midnight, carrying flowers from the dead queen's shrine. So they knew about that too. Excellent. I was drunk, Elara said, because honesty was apparently all she had left. Mistress Corwin's expression did not change. Pack your things. The world tilted sideways. What? You're being transferred. Transferred where? That is not your concern. Mistress, please. The order has been signed. You leave at sunset. But I didn't. I only. You broke into a royal shrine, stole sacred property, entered the king's private chambers without permission. Corwin's voice was flat. Any one of those crimes warrants transfer. All three together is generous. Generous. They were calling exile generous. Who signed the order? Elara asked. Corwin hesitated for just a moment. The king. The words did not make sense. Kael had been kind. He had let her go. He had even seemed almost grateful for the flowers. And he had signed her exile. That can't be right, Elara whispered. The seal is genuine. But what happened last night is irrelevant. You have until sunset. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Elara walked back to the servants' quarters in a daze. Around her, the palace continued its morning routine. Servants hurried past with laundry baskets. Guards changed shifts. Kitchen boys carried breakfast trays to nobles who would never remember their faces. Everything was normal. Everything was wrong. She had brought him flowers. Stupid, stolen flowers. And he had looked at her like she was the first kind thing to walk into his sad, perfect bedroom in 20 years. And then he had signed her away. Marin helped her pack in silence. There was not much to pack. One extra dress, a sewing kit, a cloak that actually belonged to her, though it was significantly less impressive than the one she had borrowed. Where do you think they're sending you? Marin asked quietly. Elara knew where. Everyone knew where. When the palace wanted servants to disappear, they called it transfer and sent you north. To the work camps, to the border settlements, to places where people went and never came back. Her mother had been transferred 20 years ago. Elara had been 3. I don't know, she lied. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. Marin hugged her hard. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. By late afternoon, Elara had finished packing and run out of ways to avoid the inevitable. The wagon would leave at sunset. She had 2 hours. She could spend them hiding in her room. Or she could do one more stupid thing. She chose stupid. The guards tried to stop her at the West Wing. She pushed past them. They did not chase. Even palace guards knew when someone was walking toward their own execution. She found him in his study, standing by the window with his back to the door. His shoulders were rigid, his hands were clenched at his sides. He knew she was there. She could tell by the way his spine went straighter. Did you sign it? She asked. He did not turn. Yes. Why? Because it was safer. For who? For you. Elara laughed. It came out broken and wrong. You think exiling me is safe? Compared to what they wanted to do to you, yes. Who are they? The council. The court. Everyone who has a rule about servants stealing sacred objects and breaking into royal chambers. I brought you flowers, Elara said. That's all. I was drunk and stupid and I brought you flowers because I thought you looked sad. I know. Then why am I being punished? Because you broke the law. So did you. That made him turn. His eyes were storm gray and furious. What? 20 years ago. You signed transfer orders for my mother. Kael went very still. What was her name? Elara Thorne. Recognition flashed across his face. Then something darker. I remember. Do you remember why you signed it? She was accused of stealing from the royal treasury. She didn't steal anything. The evidence was false. My mother was a seamstress. She had no access to the treasury, but someone needed a scapegoat, and servants are always convenient. Kael's hands uncurled. Elara, you signed that order 20 years ago, and you signed mine today. So tell me, Your Majesty, how am I any safer now than she was? Because I will not let them kill you. The words came out fierce and raw and desperate. Elara stared at him. What? The council wanted execution, for desecrating the shrine, for entering my chambers uninvited, for he started again. They wanted you dead. I gave them transfer instead. That's not mercy. That's just slower death. It's time for what? To figure out how to save you. Elara's breath caught. What are you talking about? Kael crossed the room in 3 strides, caught her shoulders in hands that were too gentle for a man who looked like he was barely holding himself together. I can't stop the transfer, he said. Not without the council declaring me unfit and taking the crown. But I can follow you. Follow me where? Wherever they send you. That's insane. I know. You're the king. I don't care. They'll kill you for abandoning the crown. Then they'll kill me. His hands tightened. But I will not let you disappear the way your mother did. Elara could not breathe. could not think, could only stare at this man, who had gone from stranger to impossible in the span of 12 hours. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you smell like mine." The words hit her like lightning. "What?" "Since the moment you walked into my room smelling like wine and moonflowers and bravery, my wolf has been screaming that you belong to me." "That's not possible." "I know. Seraphine was your mate." "No." The word came out broken. "She wasn't." Elara went very still. "What?" "The bond was false. Forced. I didn't know until she died, and the pain did not come." Kale. "For 20 years I thought I had lost my mate. That the bond had died with her. That I would spend the rest of my life alone." He cupped her face and hands that were shaking. "Then you walked into my room carrying stolen flowers and making jokes about grief counseling, and my wolf woke up for the first time in 20 years. Elara's heart was doing impossible things in her chest. "You can't mean—" "You're my mate," Kale said. "Real mate, true mate, the bond I was supposed to have from the beginning. That's why you signed the transfer. If you stay here, they will kill you. The council cannot allow a servant to be bonded to the crown. So you're sending me away. I'm buying time. Then I'm coming after you. And then what? Then we run. Or we fight. Or we burn the whole palace down. I don't care, as long as I don't lose you." Elara should tell him he was insane. Should explain that this was impossible. Should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak when he came to his senses. But she was tired of being careful, tired of being invisible, tired of doing the sensible thing while the world took everything she loved. So instead, she kissed him, hard and desperate and fierce, with her hands in his hair and his arms around her waist, and 20 years of grief pouring into one perfect, impossible moment. When they broke apart, Kale's eyes were full gold. "I will find you," he said. "I swear it. Promise? On my crown and my wolf and every breath I have left." Elara believed him. She had to, because in 2 hours, the wagon would take her away, and all she would have left was hope. Chapter 2. The transfer wagon left at sunset with 12 girls who had committed various crimes against palace order. Elara sat in the back corner and tried not to think about Kael's promise, tried not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you killed when reality failed to cooperate. But she could still feel his hands on her face, still taste his mouth, still hear his voice saying, "I will find you." So she hoped anyway. The wagon rolled through 2 villages, into hills, toward forest. Deep forest, old forest. The kind that had opinions about humans, and most of them were unfriendly. The driver stopped at a way station as night fell. "Rest here. We ride before dawn." The girls climbed out. Some cried, some stared at nothing. One tried to run and was dragged back by guards who looked bored by the attempt. Elara sat on a barrel and tried to breathe through the hollow ache in her chest. 3 days. Kale had said he needed 3 days to arrange things, to make it look like he was obeying the council while secretly planning to abandon everything. She had to survive 3 days. Then she felt it. Not a sound, not a scent, just wrongness. Pressure in the air like the forest itself had gone predator. The other girls felt it too. They went quiet, still, every human instinct screaming danger. The rogues came out of the trees. Not palace wolves, not civilized guards. Wild wolves, eyes mad with hunger and something darker, something broken. The driver shouted. Someone screamed. The wolves attacked. Elara ran. She did not think, did not plan, just ran into the forest with death howling behind her, and 3 days stretching like eternity. She made it 50 yards before her foot caught a root. She went down hard, breath knocked out, vision sparking. The wolf landed on top of her, massive, scarred, eyes glowing with madness and hunger, claws digging into her shoulders hard enough to draw blood. She was going to die here, in a forest, alone. 3 days too soon. The rogue opened its jaws. Then something black and massive hit it from the side. The rogue flew, crashed into a tree with a sound like breaking stone. Elara looked up. The wolf standing over her was enormous, midnight black, eyes burning full gold, a silver scar through one brow. Kale. He shifted back to human in one fluid movement, naked and covered in the rogue's blood and breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. Elara could not speak, could only stare at this impossible man who had promised to find her and had done it in 1 day instead of 3. Elara. He crouched beside her, hands hovering near her shoulders but not touching. Are you hurt? You came, she whispered. Of course I came. It's only been 1 day. I told you, I don't care about their timeline. More rogues were coming. She could hear them crashing through the trees, see their eyes reflecting moonlight. Kale heard them too. He pulled her to her feet, his touch careful despite the violence still trembling through him. Can you run? He asked. Yes. Then run north. Don't stop. What about you? I'll be right behind you. It was a lie. They both knew it. Kale, run. He shifted again, all black fur and fury, and charged the rogues. Elara ran. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs shook, until she could not hear fighting anymore, and the forest went silent in that terrible way that meant something had won, or something had died. Then she stopped, turned back, walked toward the silence. She found him by a stream, shifted back to human, bleeding from a dozen wounds. You were supposed to keep running, he said. I don't take orders well. I noticed. His blood was too dark, too much of it, spreading across the ground in a way that made her stomach turn. How bad? She asked. I'll heal. That's not what I asked. Kale's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Bad. Elara dropped to her knees beside him. Her hands shook as she pressed her cloak to the worst wounds. He hissed but did not pull away. Can you shift again? She asked. Not yet. How long? An hour, maybe 2. Then we wait. She had nothing to bandage him with except her dress. She tore strips from the hem, tied them tight around the deepest cuts. Her hands were covered in his blood, warm and too red and wrong. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For making you run, for not being faster, for every second you thought I had abandoned you. Elara's hands stilled. You came for me. I told you I would, in 1 day instead of 3. I couldn't wait. Why not? Because every hour you were gone felt like dying. Elara leaned forward and kissed him. Soft this time, careful, tasting blood and cedar smoke and something that felt like coming home. When they broke apart, Kale was smiling. Actually smiling. I love you, he said. The words should have shocked her. They had known each other for less than 2 days, had spent most of that time apart or running or bleeding, but Elara looked at this man who had followed her into exile and fought rogues and bled for her without hesitation, and the words felt inevitable. I know, she said. You're supposed to say it back. I love you too. His smile widened. Good. But you're still bleeding. I'm aware. Can you heal faster if you shift? Yes. But I need to rest first. So they waited. Elara kept pressure on the wounds. Kale kept his eyes on her face like she was the only thing anchoring him to consciousness. Tell me about your mother, he said quietly. Why? Because I want to know you. All of you. Elara thought about lying, about keeping that pain private, but he had bled for her. The least she could do was bleed back. She was kind, Elara said. Too kind. She would mend clothes for people who could not pay, take on extra work when someone was sick, cover for girls who overslept. Like you. Yes. What happened to her? Someone in the treasury went missing. Money was gone. My mother was the easiest target. Kale's eyes closed. I should have looked deeper. You were young, new to the crown. That's not an excuse. No, Elara agreed. But it's a reason. He looked at her then. Really looked. And something in his expression made her chest ache. I will find her, he said. She's been gone 20 years. I don't care. If she's alive, I will find her. And if she's not, his voice broke. If she's not, I will make sure everyone who hurt her answers for it. Elara wanted to tell him it was impossible, that 20 years was too long, that her mother was probably dead in some unmarked grave at the edge of the kingdom. But hope was a dangerous thing, and she had already decided to be dangerous. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Find her. Kale pulled her down to him despite the wounds, despite the blood, and kissed her like she was his reason for breathing. And maybe, Elara thought distantly, she was. Chapter 3. They made it back to the palace 3 days later. Not through the main gates, through the servant entrance. Kale wrapped in a stolen cloak, Elara in her ruined dress, both of them covered in blood and dirt. and the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting death and barely winning. The guards saw them, said nothing, let them pass. News of the king's disappearance had spread through the palace like fire. The council was in emergency session. The court was in panic. Half the kingdom thought he was dead. He was not dead. He was walking through the servants' corridors with his mate at his side, and he had never looked more alive. They made it to his chambers without being stopped. Kale locked the door behind them, turned to her and said, "We need to talk." Elara sat on the edge of his bed, the same bed she had sat on 3 nights ago, drunk and stupid and carrying stolen flowers. It felt like a lifetime ago. "They're going to try to separate us again," Kael said. "I know. The council will demand I send you away. The court will call you a distraction. The nobles will say you are beneath me. I am beneath you." "No." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her. "You are my mate, my equal, the other half of my soul. There is nothing beneath about that." Elara touched his face. "They won't see it that way. Then they can be blind." "Kael, I'm not giving you up, even if it means losing the crown? Especially then." She wanted to tell him he was being dramatic, but the look in his eyes said he meant every word. "What do we do?" she asked. "We fight. Against the entire court? If necessary. That's insane." "I know," he smiled, "but you make me want to do insane things." Before Elara could answer, someone pounded on the door. "Your Majesty," a voice called. "Elder Voss, head of the council. Open this door immediately." Kael stood slowly. "Stay behind me. I can fight too." "I know, but let me handle this." He opened the door. Voss stood in the corridor with 6 guards and a fury that could have melted stone. "Where have you been?" Voss demanded. "Out." "Out? The kingdom has been in crisis for 3 days, and you were out?" "Yes." Voss's gaze shifted to Elara. His expression darkened. "You brought her back." "Yes." The transfer order was a temporary measure. "A temporary, Your Majesty. The law is clear. Once transfer is signed, it cannot be reversed." "Watch me," Kael said. Voss's face went red. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. She is a servant. She is my mate." The corridor went dead silent. Voss stared at him. "That's impossible." "And yet true. Seraphine was your mate." "Seraphine was a lie the council forced on me to maintain control." Voss went pale. "You cannot possibly believe." "I know the truth. And so do you." For one long moment, no one moved. Then Voss stepped forward. "If you insist on this madness, I will call for a council vote. The crown can be challenged. Let them try." "You would risk civil war over a servant girl?" "I would risk everything for her." Voss's mouth tightened. "Then you are a fool." "Probably," Kael agreed, "but I'm a fool with claws." The threat was clear. Voss took a step back. "The council will hear of this," he said. "I'm counting on it." Voss left. The guards followed. The door closed. Kael turned to Elara. "That went well." "That did not go well. It could have been worse." "How?" "He could have tried to take you. And if he had, then I would have reminded him why no one challenges an alpha king in lives." The casual violence in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel safe in a way she had never felt before. "Come here," she said. He crossed to her. She pulled him down beside her on the bed. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait." "For what?" "For the council to make their move. For the court to show their hand. For everyone who thought they could control me to realize they were very, very wrong." Elara leaned against his shoulder. "I'm sorry I brought you flowers." "Don't be. Everything would be simpler if I hadn't. Everything would be emptier if you hadn't." She looked up at him. "Do you really think we can win?" "I think we can try. And if we lose? Then we run. Together. Where would we go?" "Anywhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter as long as I'm with you." Elara kissed him, soft and slow and perfect. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." And for one moment, in his sad, perfect bedroom with the world trying to tear them apart, they were exactly where they needed to be. Chapter 4. The council called a formal session at dawn. Kael went alone. Not because Elara was not invited, she absolutely was not invited, but because he wanted to handle this without her witnessing whatever ugliness came next. She waited in his chambers, pacing and trying not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. 2 hours later, Marin burst through the door. "You're alive!" Marin said. Barely. The whole palace is talking about you. I know. Half of them think you seduced the king. The other half think you're a spy. Neither is true. I know that, but they don't. Elara sat on the edge of the bed. What do you think? I think you got drunk and fell in love with the saddest man in the kingdom, and now you're both paying for it. That was unfortunately accurate. He says I'm his mate, Elara said quietly. Marin's eyes went wide. His what? His mate, his real mate, not Seraphine. That's impossible. That's what I said. But you believe him. I feel it. Here. Elara pressed her hand to her chest. Like there's a thread connecting us that gets tighter every time we're apart. Marin sat beside her. Then you're in serious trouble. I know. The council will never accept it. I know that too. But you're staying anyway. Yes. Marin hugged her hard. You're an idiot. I know. But you're my idiot. They stayed like that until footsteps echoed in the corridor. Kale entered, looking like he had fought a war and lost. Marin took one look at his face and slipped out quietly. What happened? Elara asked. They voted. And? They're giving me a choice. Elara's stomach dropped. What choice? Send you away permanently. Or step down from the crown. The words hung in the air like a blade. You should send me away, Elara said. No? Kale. No. You can't give up the crown for me. Watch me. That's not fair to the kingdom. The kingdom has had 20 years of me doing what's fair. I'm done. Elara stood and grabbed his shoulders. Listen to me. You are a good king. The best king this kingdom has had in generations. You can't throw that away. I can if it means keeping you. But what about, you think I care about the crown more than you? I think the crown matters. Not as much as you do. Kale, he kissed her. Hard and desperate and fierce. When he pulled back, his eyes were full gold. I have been alone for 20 years, he said. 20 years of doing my duty. Of being the perfect king. Of sacrificing everything for a crown I never wanted. His hands tightened on her waist. And then you walked into my room with stolen flowers and terrible jokes. And for the first time in 20 years, I remembered what it felt like to want something for myself. Elara's eyes burned. You can't give up everything. I already have. The moment I followed you into that forest I chose. The crown. You. There was never a question. But, I love you, he said simply. More than power. More than duty. More than anything else in this world. So if they want me to choose, I choose you. Elara kissed him through tears she could not stop. You're an idiot. I know. But you're my idiot. Always. They stood there, holding each other, while the kingdom waited for an answer. Then someone knocked. Your Majesty, a voice called. The council requires your response. Kale did not let go of Elara. Tell them they have it. And what is your decision? I choose her. Silence. Then, you understand what that means? I abdicate the crown. Effective immediately. More silence. Very well, Your Majesty. The council will proceed with succession. Footsteps faded. Elara pulled back to look at Kale's face. What have you done? Something I should have done 20 years ago. This is insane. Probably. They'll hunt us. Let them try. Kale, do you trust me? Yes. Then trust that I know what I'm doing. He kissed her again. Softer this time. Pack light. We leave at sunset. Where are we going? North. To find your mother. Elara's breath caught. You can't be serious. I told you I would find her. I keep my promises. But the kingdom will survive without me. It has before. And us? We'll survive together. For the first time since this whole impossible mess started, Elara smiled. Really smiled. Okay, she said. Okay? Let's go find my mother. Kale pulled her against his chest and held her like he would never let go. I love you, he whispered. I love you too. And as the sun set over the palace they were leaving behind, Elara Thorne, the drunk girl who had stolen flowers and accidentally stolen a king, realized she had never been more terrified or more certain in her entire life. They had 3 hours until the council came to strip Kale of his crown. 3 hours to pack. 3 hours to disappear. 3 hours to start the most dangerous and beautiful thing either of them had ever done. And somehow, impossibly, Elara could not wait. Epilogue, 6 months later. The cottage sat at the edge of the northern forest, small and warm and entirely unremarkable, which was exactly why no one had found them. Elara stood in the garden, hands in the dirt, planting vegetables that would see them through winter. Her dress was simple. Her hands were rough. She had never been happier. "You have dirt on your face," a voice said behind her. She turned. Kale stood in the doorway, shirtless and smiling and holding 2 cups of tea. "I'm gardening," she said. "I can see that. Plants require dirt. Do they require you to wear it?" She threw a handful of dirt at him. He dodged, laughing. That sound still made her chest ache in the best way. KL laughing. KL happy. KL choosing her every single day. He set the tea down and pulled her into his arms despite the dirt. "I have news," he said. "Good news or bad news?" "Good, I found her." Elara went very still. "My mother?" "Yes." "Where?" "3 villages north. She's alive, she's well, and she wants to see you." Elara's knees went weak. KL caught her, held her steady. "You're sure?" she whispered. "I'm sure." "How?" "It took months of searching, bribing, tracking down old transfer records, but I found her." Elara buried her face in his chest and cried, hard, messy tears that she had been holding for 20 years. Kale held her through all of it, steady and warm and perfect. When she could breathe again, she looked up at him. "Thank you," she said. "Always." "I love you." "I love you too." Shays. They stood in the garden, holding each other while the sun set and the forest went quiet around them. 6 months ago, Elara had been a servant with no future. Now she was standing in her own garden with the man who had given up a crown to keep her. It was not the ending she had expected. It was so much better. "Ready?" Kale asked. "To see my mother?" "Yes." "Are you ready?" "To meet the woman who made the person I love most in the world?" "Always." Elara kissed him, long and soft and certain. "Then let's go," she said. And hand in hand, they walked toward the next chapter of their impossible, beautiful life.